Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Everard for RUTV's Weather Watcher. Back in November, we came to the Office of the State Climatologist to talk to Dr. Dave Robinson about his position as the New Jersey State Climatologist, as well as the upcoming winter. Now we're back here at Lucy Stone Hall on the Livingston campus to talk to him about this past meteorological winter. So, Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for joining us. Again, can you tell us a little bit about your job here at the State Climatologist's Office?
Sure. I'm the New Jersey State Climatologist. I was appointed to that position by the Dean of SEBS back 1991, 22 years ago. And as such, I'm responsible, if you will, for being the spokesperson or the lead office for things dealing with the climate of the state, with a little bit of weather as well. We gather information, we do research and assist other people in research, and we're here to inform through our websites, through interviews, through speaking with classes and other organizations.
So you're a little bit of a jack of all trades, it seems?
We're the idiot savants, if you will, of all things weather and climate in New Jersey. I've got a wonderful group of people working with me. We have a network of stations around the state that record observations every 5 minutes. We have a cadre of over 250 volunteers who measure precipitation every day, and a fine staff of field technicians, research scientists, and IT specialists.
So there's a lot of people involved. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the weather. How are snowfall totals around this state for this past winter, and how did temperature maybe play into some of those accumulations over the winter months?
It was a pretty active winter, especially when you compare it to last winter, which was one of the mildest on record. But all told, we averaged a little bit above average this winter. If you look at the core months of winter, December, January, and February, it actually was the 13th warmest winter going back a whole 119 years for the state. But we had a cool November to kick it off, and March could have come in below average. So it's been a longer winter, certainly than last year. Spring is taking its time arriving, and last year it came on with a vengeance in late February and early March. So that's it for temperature. Precipitation, we've been about average. A foot of precipitation, 15 inches of precipitation around various parts of the state since Thanksgiving, let's say. And snow, about average. The northern third of the state is maybe a couple of inches above average with the snowfall on the 18th and 19th of this month. Central Jersey's maybe a couple inches below average, and southern New Jersey towards the coast about average. And over in the southwest corner of the state, maybe a little below average, but pretty darn close to an average winter for precipitation and for snow.
So we can say that here in New Brunswick at Rutgers University, we were around, if not a slight bit below average for snowfall?
Right. With snowfall, we're running, about 24, 25 inches. And that's just a couple inches below long-term average. But the long-term average is made up of years like last year when we had less than 10 inches, and 2 and 3 years ago we had 50 inches. So average is kind of a strange value. It's actually pretty unusual when we get this close to average.
I definitely remember that 50-inch winter. I was a freshman here at Rutgers during that time. Now, when we look at the regional level, how did the jet stream play into our weather here in New Jersey with some ridging out west?
It played a huge role going back to Sandy, when we had a big dip in the jet stream over the eastern U.S. that helped to pull Sandy on shore and energize it as it transitioned from a hurricane to what we call a mid-latitude cyclone. So it was huge then, and we stayed with that dip in the jet stream through November. December, it almost ridged, almost went to our north more often than not, and we were pretty mild, as we were until we got to later in January. And people remember that frigid week or two we had at the beginning of the semester. We hadn't seen cold like that in a few years, at least the persistent cold. And there it dipped, and then it went up again. And since the beginning of March, and as we go into later March, it's really dipped again quite a bit, bringing in much chillier than average conditions. So while we have vacillated back and forth here in the eastern part of the United States with the jet stream to our north or to our south, out west it's been further north than normal more often than not, and they've been very dry. The Sierras have well below average precipitation snowfall this winter. The Rockies, the Colorado River Basin areas of the Rockies below. The Pacific Northwest has been about average, but still there's a lot of water worries out west because of the lack of snowpack this winter.
So for all those ski buffs out here in the Northeast, it's the place to be. So what can we say that the general weather trend was for the lower 48 states for this past winter?
I'd say a mixed bag best describes it, because there were times when we were wondering where winter was, and then along comes a period in late February and early March where we had series of blizzards come through the southern plains and up into the Great Lakes, and one of the storms clipped us. Another one came and developed into that very odd storm that gave us this 3-day period of strong winds and mist rain, and then a period of snow that subsequently melted pretty quickly, but did an awful lot of damage along the coast. Would have been a very notable storm, except in comparison to Sandy, it was next to nothing.
Yeah, in comparison to Sandy around here, everything that comes by is next to nothing. Now, speaking of some recent storms, we had a storm in March that a lot of people were hoping would dump a lot more snow on us. Here around New Brunswick, we got about 5 inches. But why was that maybe not as intense as some people may have thought? And how do we normally fare here in New Jersey with March storms?
March storms can be very fickle. We've had some real bust when hardly anything came about. A famous one, if you will, in early March 2001 comes to mind. This storm was pretty potent at times. Along the coast, they'll say there was a lot of beach erosion, the dunes were breached in a few spots, and there was some flooding. And the southern part of the state, I think at one point 100,000 customers were without power for a brief period of time. They restored the power pretty quickly. But you're right, we expected more snow on the front end of that storm, and it never materialized. The precipitation just never arrived north of about Route 195. Then the latter part of the storm, it did kick in such that we had about 5 inches here, and there was upwards of 10, 11 inches up in some of the higher elevations of the highlands. But again, it was just a really hybrid type of storm. It was full of energy, but it depended on where it was situated as to what weather we got during the course of those couple of days, and it was very slow moving. So I won't say it was a total bust, but there were periods in that storm where the forecast failed pretty miserably. But that's the nature of March storms. They can be very fickle.
Yeah, seems like nothing but hybrid storms for this past year, especially since we had Superstorm Sandy. Now, what are some different weather mechanisms that affect our weather here in New Jersey that might be different from other states across the country?
Well, that's a good question. I like to say that in Jersey, we're kind of in a squeeze play. We don't grow a lot of our own weather. We kind of import it from elsewhere. And we have this huge continent to our west, which can bring milder, drier winds across the continent. We've got the ocean to our east, which can pull in some moist, damp, and sometimes very chilly when you get to spring, very chilly air. But we're kind of, if you will, halfway up to the poles, where it's still the dead of winter in many respects. Yet you don't have to go too far south, as some Rutgers students know from spring break, to see how much milder it can be down in the southeastern part of the state. So we're squeezed in, and there's always this battle between which one's going to win out, which makes our weather very variable. It makes it pretty interesting, too.
So we definitely always have a lot of interesting weather here in New Jersey. So thank you so much to our state climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson, for talking to us today. For more information about the state climatologist, you can visit the office here on the Livingston campus at Lucy Stone Hall or visit njclimate.net for more information. For Weather Watcher, I'm Rebecca Everard.